We're in a series called Light, and this is Stories of Illumination. And we believe that in this season, there is always this tendency to look at the darkness and think we're all alone in the dark spaces of our minds, when in fact, many of us can identify with moments of difficulty and pain. Scripture tells us that even the darkness is not dark for God. And that's the title of this morning's message, Even the Darkness is Not Dark. The theme of this third week of Advent is joy. Now, I don't know about you, but joy is sometimes hard to come by depending on our circumstances. And that's why it's important for us to understand that while joy is often thought of as happiness, like they're closely connected. It's true, they are closely connected. But when we're unhappy about our circumstances, when we're disgruntled about the tough times that we have to navigate, to be joyful seems out of reach. And so this is where a proper understanding of joy is important. Joy stems from this inner purpose that we find. Joy has deep meaning. Joy is connection to where happiness is more of an external experience. The events around us often dictate whether or not we're going to be happy or we're going to be sad. Joy is deep. It is deeply rooted. It's an internal state. It's a choice that's rooted in gratitude, in purpose, and in resilience. These weeks before Christmas, as we recognize the darkness, it's important for us to keep pointing each other toward the light. These weeks are meant to encourage us to continually be aware that the problem we all face is that when we are in pain, when we are struggling, we often feel isolated and alone. This is also when we're tempted to hide and remain in the dark. Sometimes we begin to ask questions like, if God is for me, and if He is with me, and I'm fighting with this thing that is stealing my joy, be it grief, be it sorrow, and all manner of pain and suffering, why doesn't He just take it from me to ensure that I remain joyful? Why doesn't He just take it from me? And if in fact God is with me in the dark night of the soul, how do I expedite this process of figuring out, what am I supposed to learn? I have these conversations all the time with people who are in the middle of difficult moments of suffering, who look at me and they may look at you and they may say, if God is for me, why am I in this moment? Why must I go through this experience? The truth is, we're not alone. It may feel like it. It may look like it, but loneliness is an emotion that is a human emotion that all of us grapple with at one time or another. Now, I don't mean to say this to dismiss what you feel, but I want to encourage you and remind you that what we all want to know, what we all need to know, is that when we feel alone, God is not absent in the darkness. He is present within the darkness. And I believe, it's my contention, backed up by Scripture, that He joins us and He invites us to honest reflection on the pain and on the loss and on the uncertainty. And that's where we discover that even in those hidden places, God's light still reaches and restores. God's light still brings joy. But it is found in this deep, internal, God-confident joy. That's where we find what we're looking for. In Isaiah chapter 7, Isaiah speaks to the children of Israel who have been in deep darkness, who are finding it difficult to move forward. And he prophesies that there is a Messiah coming. His name will be Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us. And then in Matthew chapter 1, Matthew confirms this prophecy. when he says these words. He says, "Look, the virgin will conceive a child. She will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel," which means God with us. See, joy will move us from deep darkness. And it doesn't always move us immediately to the light, but it moves us toward the realization that even when the darkness is deep, there still, and especially there, God is with his people. In preparing for this weekend, I recognize that in some of my conversations with people who are in deep darkness, that there's a figure in the Old Testament, the book of Job. You'll find it between the book of Esther and the Psalms. And the story of Job follows a righteous man. He was a wealthy man whose life is shattered by the challenge of Satan to God. And then this leads to the loss of all of his children, his wealth, and his health. And it plunges him into a profound moment of suffering and a joyless existence where Job questions God's justice. If you've read the story, you know that he sits and debates with his friends, and he laments the day of his birth and wishes for the grave to consume him. Here's what he says in Job chapter 10. He says, "I have only a few days left, so leave me alone." He's talking to God. "That I may have a moment of comfort before I leave, never to return, for the land of darkness and utter gloom. It is a land as dark as midnight, a land of gloom and confusion, where even the light is dark as midnight." Job was living in a very dark headspace. He's complaining bitterly about the injustice done to him. He's demanding of God an explanation. Have you ever been in a place where you demanded of God an explanation for the suffering and pain in your life? That's what Job was doing. He wanted a justification for the suffering that he, an innocent man, was enduring. So God responds, and he responds in a supernatural whirlwind, not with answers, but he responds with a reminder that Job was challenging the creator of the universe. Job, do you know who you're talking to? You're talking to the creator of the universe. When Job recognized this, it humbled him, and he repented for his presumption. And we finish up the book of Job with these words from him. Job 42, "Then Job replied to the Lord, I know that you can do anything, and no one can stop you. You asked, who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorance? It is I, it is Job, and I was talking about things I knew nothing about, things far too wonderful for me. You said, listen and I will speak. I have some questions for you, and you must answer them. I had only heard about you before." This is Job's words. "God, I only heard about you before, but now I have seen you with my own eyes. I take back everything I said, and I sit in dust and ashes to show my repentance." The end of the story is that Job gets back his life, gets it back double. He gets clarity about what it really means to trust God, even when the darkness is not completely gone. So regarding that earlier question about why doesn't God take this from me, the truth is, as the story of Job shows us, God is more concerned with who we're becoming than how it is that we arrive at that becoming. God is more concerned about who we're becoming than how we arrive at that becoming. That's why I don't believe this morning that we should try to hurry the process for ourselves or others. If we read Matthew chapter 5, we'll see that the fruit of the Spirit, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, it's not easily developed. Those things come over time in the journey that each one of us is on. It requires us to become a person that has an attitude of gratitude. That's what the fruit of the Spirit requires of us. It requires of us not to have a spirit of entitlement, but of selfless love. This is how we get through the darkness. To know that we invite God into this mix to move us from darkness to light. King David writes these words in Psalm chapter 139. He says, even the darkness is not dark to you. To you the night shines as bright as day. Darkness and light are the same to you. This is what each one of us has to consider when we're in the middle of dark spaces, where we experience loss and suffering. Perhaps we're contending with negative health perspective. Whatever the situation is that you're walking through right now that appears really dark, God is waiting to move you from that darkness to his light. This morning and every weekend in this series, we are inviting someone to come and share their story of moving from darkness to light. And I'd like you to give a good restore welcome to Justin Moyer. I met Justin about 13 years ago, and our lives have been intertwined ever since then. And today
I haven't aged since then at all either.
Me either. Like I have no, like when I met you, I think I had had dark hair. That isn't to say that your impact on my life caused me to have gray hair, but there's been a lot of years between when we first met and where we are today. So this morning, the reason I asked Justin to join me is because Justin's story is unique, and yet it is also on a similar trajectory as many of yours. Justin, when I met you, your kids were, well, I don't know if Tyler was born, but I don't know if Kaylin was born when we met. 2012.
Nicole's saying yes, so,
yes, so
yeah,
they
I'll
both
go
were.
with that.
Okay. So you're married to Nicole. You have two kids, both in high school, and you are a business owner. You have multiple businesses, so you've kind of been this serial entrepreneur, and that's one of the ways that I know that like I've always enjoyed conversation with you. But I also know that you have had a series of circumstances in your life that have been difficult, and you've had choices to make as you navigated those circumstances. Before we get to those, though, since we're talking about joy this weekend, I wonder if you could share what is like some of your top seasons, like joy-filled seasons. What are your top 3 or so?
Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity this morning, and also thank you for really not letting me know what I'm supposed to talk about when I'm up here. So this could be interesting. My wife says I like to talk, so I think I'm all right. So yeah, in terms of joy, you know, 2 of them are the obvious. You know, obviously when I got married and early on in our marriage, that was just so exciting and things were new. And so that was a season of joy there. And then, you know, obviously when our kids were born, and I'll talk a little bit about that and how we came to that decision and one of the difficult times that Nicole and I went through, but a little bit later. But that was 2 of them. And the third one I'll talk about towards the end, I guess. That kind of puts a bow on the most recent season of joy that I've gone through.
So you grew up in Wakarusa, is that right?
Yeah, born in Elkhart. My family moved to Wakarusa when I was about 10 years old.
And how did you, so one of his businesses is Moyer Electric. So how did you come to be an electrician?
So I'm technically 3rd generation on my mom's side of the family. My grandfather, who I never met, was an alcoholic and committed suicide. And he showed my dad the trade, and my parents were dating at that time when that happened. And my mom found her dad in their living room floor of their house after he'd been missing for a few days. And so my dad was actually working for him at the time, and then my dad carried on in the trade. And I was really my dad's first full-time employee. I went to a year and a half of Bible college. I thought I wanted to be a pastor. And after a year and a half there, I realized that God wired me more for business than to be a pastor. So,
Is that pun intended or no pun intended?
yeah, we're kind of similar in that, right? You're just the other way around. So I moved back. I went to work for my dad, and my dad he retired from our company, and so that's just what I've always done. I mean, I've always done electrical work since I was real little. Back in the day, where you could take a kid and go in a factory, and now you can't. But that's how I stumbled across that.
You just breezed by a few things. I did not know about your grandfather. I did not know that your mom found him. And that kind of leads into my next question, because I think it's relevant. Those details are really relevant when you begin to speak about the home you grew up in. Maybe you could give us some insight there.
Yeah, so we could have 10 conversations together, and there's always some piece of my story that is unique or, I haven't uncovered. But what was the question?
The family you grew up in.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I'm one of 3 biological kids in my family. Adoption has run all the way through my family. My grandparents were not able to have any kids on the Moyer side. My dad and all his siblings were adopted. So my parents had 3 biological kids. My oldest brother, I'm the middle, and then my brother Chris, and then 4 adopted from Korea. And that all happened when I, around 9 years old, my parents started adopting some kids from Korea. My mom, I'll touch on this a little bit. I could go on for a long time, and it for most of you it'd probably be pretty interesting. But my mom has been. Let me back up. So 20, 30 years ago, the whole mental illness thing was not really something that was talked about. And as I look at my mom, and I look back at my childhood. My mom is one of those people you could take all of the mental illness, put it in a bottle, shake it up, and that was kind of my mom. Now, looking back, I'm grateful in a lot of ways for my mom when I step back. She always made sure we were in church, and you didn't miss. And Nicole and I have tried to do that with our kids. That was one thing I can appreciate about my mom now that I've stepped back and looked at it. I had a very, very bad relationship with my mom. I distinctly remember when I was in, I think it was 3rd grade. No, it was 5th grade. I had a friend that I wanted to go spend the night at their house, and my mom told me that you can't go over there because they go to the Methodist church. And at the time, I knew that wasn't right, and that was the first time I thought, something's not right here. And fast forward, I'm kind of jumping a little bit, but my parents ended in divorce my senior year in high school, and a lot of that was because of the mental illness part of my mom. My mom is still living, and she's in a facility, and she now she's been diagnosed with dementia. And so what's really interesting about that is, I'm now hardly had any relationship with my mom, and now my brother and I are her caretakers. So it's kind of come full circle. And there's a lot of things that I can step back and, had no relationship with my mom, but I can honestly say, I love my mom, and there's so many good things that I can look back and say, here's the good things about how I grew up. And Nicole and I were just talking about that this week. Looking back, there's always something that you can look back, and I can't blame. It does me no good to blame and say, I had no mom growing up. Or I can look at it and think, here's the good parts about this situation. And so I have a new appreciation for that, I guess. What else do I need to talk about in terms of my family? So I have multiple, I will say this. I was thinking about this morning. Nicole and I often talk about this. Our family has divorce on both sides. And we say, just because we know what we're talking about, in our family, divorce has been a good thing. And before you go crazy on that, I can step back and I can look at what God's done. I have new family, people that love our kids and love us as a part of that. And so I can look and think, well, I had divorce on both sides. My mom has dementia, all these things stacked against me. But or I can look at it and say, here's the good part about all this. And that's kind of what I've chosen to do, because quite honestly, I don't have another good option. You either have to soak in it and be miserable, or you just go and say, you know what, this is good. And I believe a lot of it's a blessing from God. I honestly do.
Well, and what I would just add to that, Justin, is this has not always been your perspective. And because I know that when I first met you, your relationship with your mom was not good. And so to see the perspective you've taken, and I kind of know about when all of that shifted, but for you to take that perspective is an indication of the work of God in your life. And you just said, like, you had a choice, and you chose to live into grace and mercy as opposed to the opposite, which is where you might have resided for a while. Yeah. Okay, so that's a bit of background for your family. When it comes to the lessons you've learned as a business owner working with people, what is it that, like, how many employees do you have across the board?
Between the three businesses, around 150.
Yeah, so you don't run a business, run an organization with those kinds of numbers without knowing about how people tick. You have to be able to speak into their lives. And how have you blended the faith, your own faith, with also then operating a business that you have employees from all kinds of places and experiences?
I think, just in the way we would treat people, and model treating people, that we really view that the people who work for us are, they're people. They're not employees. They're not just employees. And, I don't, and I really believe that. I just told a guy Friday, actually, came in my office, and we were talking about another job opportunity that he had, and I just reassured him that, like, you can go and do that, and I'm fine with it, but I still care about your family. And he's been with me a long time, and that's true. And it sounds easy to say, but it's actually true. Yeah.
Well, I just know that Michael, one of your employees, former employees that has now moved out of the area, you introduced me to him, and he did work here. He did work at various places where I was connected with him, and Brenda was connected with him. And then to see him, I did his wedding. Brenda and I did their premarital counseling, and it's this interweaving. When I said early on that our lives have been interconnected ever since 13 years ago, that's one of the ways where we have shared people, if you will, and gotten to know each other's friends and coworkers. All right, so you had a particular employee that you were particularly fond of, and Thursday, May 7th, 2020 will be a day that you will never forget.
Yeah, so this is kind of just after COVID, and COVID was just ending in some states, and we were excited to get out of here and go to Florida. Florida was one of the first places open, and if I could move anywhere tomorrow, it'd be Florida. And so we loaded up in our RV and went to Florida with some friends and got all set up down there, and got a call from my oldest brother that my younger brother had been killed on a motorcycle. And Chris worked for me, and he had spent about, I want to say 10 years, it could be more than that, out in Maui, and had an electrical business out there, and moved back here and came to work for me. And it was one of those nice spring days where the sun comes out and everybody's ready to get out. And he left a job site in Syracuse and went home, took a shower, and got on his Harley, and had an accident on State Road 119, was killed. And that was not something that was in the hand of cards for me. And I often say, looking back, our family, we've had, death has gotten out of the natural order. So, I've had grandparents that died, we all have, and it's so sad, and, that's hard. But when things get out of order and people die that aren't supposed to at that stage in life, it's tough. And my first experience with that, I'll back up a little bit even more than that, was Nicole and I were dating, and my brother and sister-in-law were expecting a baby, and she was born, and she died at 3 months old. And when Lauren died, I distinctly remember my brother and sister-in-law just deciding that they're going to trust God. And I always remembered that. And so when my brother died, so I'll back up just a little tidbit. So when Nicole and I got married then, that was, we were actually dating, and we broke up about 50 million times because, it's just, when you go through that, in my mind, I thought the joy of having a child is not worth it in comparison to the pain of the loss. So we had really battled back and forth because I just made up my mind. It's like, you know what? I'm building a business. I don't care about a family. I don't want kids. Forget this. It's not worth it. And because I'll just put my nose to the grindstone and I won't deal with that. And it's easier. And of course I was wrong. And because, nothing, the joy of having kids has been the greatest joy of my life. But I just distinctly remember in that season that, and I know my brother and sister-in-law, they had to just say it. Sometimes so when my brother died, I remember just a whole season of, I just decided, I'm going to trust God. I don't really believe it in my heart, but in my mind, I'm just saying, I'm trusting God. That's it. And multiple conversation with Gene, I went through all the emotions. You just want to check out. You really do. And everybody's grief story is different. And but I that was the one thing that I always that I still think about now. It's like when I don't understand it, and on this side of heaven, I won't. Why would a baby die? There's no way to make sense of that. But I knew that God is faithful, and I'm going to trust Him. And over a period of time, with grief for me, grief is different for everyone. But, people always say time heals. That's what you just hear, And I've really struggled with that. And I think what they mean is, what it means for me is, it doesn't heal, but allows you to look at things differently. So we're 5 years past when my brother died. And I can go back to those moments in a heartbeat, and it hurts. Or I can step back and I can look at all the good things that have happened. Lives have been impacted. Really a big change in our family. We're closer as a family. And we went the last season of joy that I was in. Not the last. I mean, hey, there's good things other than this, but. We went last last Christmas, our whole entire Moyer side went to Maui, and we spread my brother's ashes. And that was, I mean, it doesn't sound like a joyful thing, but from what we went through and to be together as a family like that was just, there was nothing like it.
Grief has a way of either pulling us apart or bringing us together. And I think it's really beautiful that you guys have managed to pull together during the seasons of grief.
I want to say this too, and this is not a Restore Church commercial, okay? This is just me saying what's true. We had come from, prior to my family coming here to church, we had had some just awesome church experiences and mountaintop experiences and some valleys. And we started attending Restore, like, I want to say 2 weeks before COVID shut down or something like that, wasn't it, Nicole? Just about then. And I'm so grateful because I had a community of people. I have dear friends. Some of them are here, came to see me speak this morning. But I'm so grateful for this community because during that season and still now, people know my story and people know the journey, and it's been incredible. I would sit about where Kevin sits after my brother died for about 2 years, and I'd come in here and I'd look at that up there and I'd envision my brother being one of those sheep. Every week, come in here and do that. And most wouldn't know I am an emotional guy. Most would not know that about me. And I'd sit there in that seat and I'd cry. And I'd come back the next week, do the same thing. It was on a repeat. And I still do sometimes. It's good. So I just want to say, that was a huge part for me. It's like I was mad, ticked off, all the things. I mean, anybody who's been through grief like that knows you go through all these seasons. But at the end of the day, I decided I'm going to trust God. And if I don't believe it, I'm going to trust it. I'm going to keep saying it until I do, because that was my option.
Well, I had a few other questions to ask, but you've actually answered those questions already. And so I'm grateful for the way that God just gave that message through you. Dudinsky, as an author, he says that grieving is a necessary passage and a difficult transition to finally letting go of sorrow. It is not a permanent rest stop. Let me read that again. Grieving is a necessary passage. This is something that we often forget. Grief is a necessary passage. It's a difficult transition to finally letting go of sorrow. It is not a permanent rest stop. How miserable we are if we permanently stop at sorrow and don't allow the grief to work itself out.
Can I say one more thing? One of the things that I think it's so important for people who are walking through grief, generally speaking, I think this would be true. People want to talk about it. And I realize that. It's like, I never thought the impact of somebody sending me a card. You don't think about that's a big deal. It's a huge deal. And just being willing to talk about it. I mean, I love talking about my brother. I do. And it's hard, though, when, to go up to somebody because you don't know, are this person going to break down or whatever. But it's good, and it's especially around holidays, it's tough. And so if you have opportunities like that, when you have somebody that's close to you that's walking through, or just somebody that you know of, it's okay to say something. They want you to. I really believe that.
So here's what we can do out of a conversation like this. Especially as Christmas draws near, it's good for us to be mindful of, like, what are the things that God has been revealing to you about his faithfulness? Where has God been incredibly faithful to you? I think it's important for us to take a moment to express joy for some of the ways that we've experienced his shepherding, his heart, and his fatherly care in our seasons. Something else that is important is to reflect on some areas in your life that seem dark and unclear to you right now. What are those things that are dark and unclear? It could be struggles at work, parenting decisions, marriage difficulties. It could be financial hardship. Christmas doesn't eliminate all the conflicts we experience, but it does point us to the one who promises to never leave us or forsake us, and he invites us into those moments with him. And so in a minute, we're going to pray. But I want to tell you that the prayer ministry team will be in the front this morning. And this season of moving from darkness to light is often a difficult one, as we've talked about. But often we get a breakthrough when we say, I'm having a hard time. I need a little help. And so if that's you this morning, if you just need someone to pray with you, whether it's an upcoming family event that you're dreading because of a potential conflict or whatever the case, we're here to pray for you. And we'd love to have you come and receive that. So would you stand? And Justin, I'm going to ask you to pray for us as we close this time.
Father, we're grateful this morning for this opportunity to come and worship and just contemplate what joy looks like during a season. In a room like this, we know that people come in with all kinds of emotions, some good, some bad, hurt, pain. And God, we ask you this morning that you would help us peel some of those layers back to help us see those situations as you'd like us to see them. Be with those who are experience deep pain this holiday season. We ask for just an extra measure of your mercy and grace on them. And we ask that you would be with us the rest of this service. In Christ's name, amen.